All right, let's start out with opening Power BI. Now we're going to go through some good practices here. We're going to go into our transform data to load the data. Now, why do we need to do that? Well, apparently, whether this is true or not, who knows, but the standard practice or acceptable practice is that when you load it from here, it loads the complete data and not just a sampling. So that's what we're going to do. Everything looks okay as far as what we want to do here. The goal of this tutorial is to create a lookup table from the fact table. Now you're going to be called upon to do that quite often, and the step-by-step approach really is to duplicate the table that you want to make into a fact table. Call it what you want to call it. In this case, we're going to call it customers. Okay. And then the idea is to delete as much of this data that does not correspond with a particular fact table. Now, if you notice in the product, we have a product code. So in this particular instance, if we were going to do products, all right, let's do products. Just let's duplicate another one and do the products, just to show you what I'm talking about. All right, so what we want to do here is since we're in products, we want to delete everything that is not associated with the product. So let's get rid of this. Status. Now, there's gonna be times when you aren't really sure, so you really have to kind of make a decision. But for this purposes, we're going to leave the product line, the MSRP, the product code. We're going to get rid of all the customer information. We'll deal with that later when we deal with customers. It looks like everything else can go. All right, now, if you notice here, we have a lot of duplication, and that's not what a lookup table should have. So what you want to do at this point is right-click and remove the duplicates. Okay, now you notice we have 0 duplicates, and this isn't required, but I kind of like to do it, is to have the code at the beginning. So, and I like to rename it so it looks better when the reports are generated. We'll call that a product ID. We'll call this product line. And we'll leave MSRP. So basically, we're done with the product lookup table. But now we have to get rid of the information that's not associated with that product ID in the main table, in the fact table. Okay, so the only thing we want to rename this to product ID. And we want to get rid of these 2 columns because we don't need them. That's the point of doing the lookup table. Now, here's the magic that happens when you do that. Okay, let's close and apply. We'll come back to the customers. The customer is kind of a special case and the purpose for this video. All right, if you look at the relationships now, you will see that it created the relationship automatically for us. And why is that? Because we named it the same, the product ID. If you look in here, okay, you see that the product ID, and it's a one-to-many, which is what we usually want. There can be exceptions, but most lookup tables should be unique. Each item in the lookup table should be unique, which would cause a one-to-many relationship, which is exactly what we want. Now, the customers it didn't know what to associate with the customer because there is no customer ID. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to use the same procedure that we did before with the products, except this time we're going to have to kind of fit it back in once we create what's an actual product or customer ID. We're going to fit it back into the fact table. And that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so let's go back to our transform data. We'll go on to the customer table. I'm going to get rid of everything that is not associated with the customer. Now for this particular exercise, we're actually going to get rid of all this, plus we're going to leave the customer name, and now all this stuff is associated with the customer, and in normal operations you would leave it in your customer table, but for now I'm just going to get rid of it just for the simplicity purposes. So remove columns. So really all we're left here is a customer name. Now remember what I told you before, they have to be unique. Let's see if there are any duplications, and there are. So what we want to do is remove duplicates. Now once you have your duplicates removed, you want to add a new column called index, and that's what's going to be, I usually like to go from 1 up. You can go from 0 up if you want, that's your choice. But again, let's rename this to customer ID, and let's make this prettier, customer name. And the reason why we want to make these kind of pretty is because when you do your reports, they're going to use exactly the names in your reports that you specify in your tables. So if you had that, all caps and no break in between, that's what it's going to look like, and that's not always nice to look at. All right. So now we have our customer table, and we need to retrofit it back into the the fact table. So what we want to do is we want to do a merge. So we go back to the home and do merge queries. So now we have, choose the customer table, and we're going to do customer name here. We have to match it up, and customer name here. Now you see that they match up, and that's good. When we do that, at the end of the fact table, the sales table, you're going to see this kind of weird customers table thingy. And what we want to do is this is what's known as expanding it out. That's why you have the 2 arrows that go out. So we're going to expand it. And we're going to if we leave this use original column name as prefix, what that will do is it'll put some kind of weird prefix of the previous column, and you really don't want that. And we also want to get rid of the customer name because we already have it. So it's going to match up the customer name, but it's in this expansion is going to insert the customer ID, which is exactly what we want. All right, so now we have the customer ID. Let's move it to where it should be. You don't really need to do this, but I like to do it. And sometimes for big tables like this, it can be a pain, but all right, now we have the customer ID. We can get rid of the customer name. And you don't want to remove duplicates or anything like that, so you just want to remove this. Now, like I said before, if we were to keep this information, or if we had added this information into the customer table, we could get rid of all this other stuff too, but for now we're just going to leave it in. All right, so now that we've renamed the customer here and here, the customer ID, when we close and apply and go to our relationships, we should see the customer matched, and we do. There it is. It's a beautiful thing. All right, so there you have it. There's 2 ways that you can create a lookup table. One is if you already have an ID, that's the fastest way. You just duplicate the fact table, get rid of what you don't need, remove duplicates, okay, and then pretty much you're all done. And rename the columns to be the same in both the new fact table and the new lookup table and your fact table. But if you don't have some kind of identifier, then you kind of have to, you go through the same process, duplicating the fact table, get rid of everything you don't need, remove the duplicates, okay, that's important, and then you create what's known as an index column. Then you have to kind of retrofit using the merge command back into the fact table and get rid of what you don't need. And that's basically the entire process. Hopefully you got a lot out of this and you enjoyed the seminar. And let us know if you have any questions.